want to start here. I want to give these to Reverend Rose because they're quartz, and we got them in Mount Ida when we were traveling around to our favorite crystal place. And you have created such an atmosphere of love here. And David is going to play the Love Quartz Crystal Bowl. So the fact is that we're all connected by quartz crystal. Every one of us has quartz crystal in our matrix, in our cells, in our brains. And that is one of the elements that demonstrates scientifically our oneness. Cool, huh? So I've been preparing this talk, and I should say it has been preparing me. Because one of the things that happens when you sit out on a path to deliver a message is that it has to come through you and it transforms you. It's a wonderful process. Like David and I were talking, and I said, oh, I got to go make a note, because things start coming through that God's healing message is coming through me to you, to us. And I want to thank God for the message and for the transformation that I've experienced while preparing it. Whew. I'll just communicate all that information to you, because we are in a world of information. What do you see little kids doing this all day? Because they're fascinated by the incredible speed of the bytes of frequencies that are being communicated in the world. We have been stifled in our use, in our therapeutic use, in our spiritual use of frequencies and their power to heal. Wow. Because we have been held in a mold that has been forming around us for generations, lifetimes. Since the beginning, we have been shaped into being oppressed. Now, that was the final message I got this morning as I was making my final preparation for this talk. The message was, you have been trained not to know that you are God. How to overcome that training. So I got out my voice map machine this morning, and I voice mapped my fear of believing that I was God. I have been searching for scriptures. I have been searching for words in Charles Fillmore's writing, and searching for words all around the world that would make it okay for me to say I am God. And it has been an incredible journey, because as I read the scriptures, it was just sort of squeezed in there, you know. One little sentence among thousands of sentences with, ye are God. Oh God, why is it so small? You know, it's so big. And then I had a client come in who was the victim of her aggressive, verbally abusive husband. And she was such a kind and loving person. And he had told me that. He had said, she's just so kind and loving, but she's not okay. What he didn't realize is that she wasn't okay because one reason is he was stifling her. I'm moved by this. I'm moved by this opportunity to share about her. She's such a beautiful person, and he said that. He said, she deserves to be well. And when we got down to the bottom of what was causing her to be ill, which no one really wants to know, Do you understand? We are caught in a web of healthcare system that is in denial of the cause of illness. Complete denial of the cause of illness. My husband and I went into a doctor's office, my first visit in years, because Medicare says you have to, or they'll cancel your insurance or whatever. And all that was happening there was people were horrified to be there because they knew that their insurance was being canceled and so forth and all this. Mostly just unhappiness. No one had any interest in me and what was really going on with me. The clarity of my lungs and whether or not I can breathe well has nothing to do with what's going on with me deeply. I want to care about people. I want to know that people care about me. So I looked at this woman. First visit, she said, "Oh, no, there's nothing that would have caused me any problems in life because I had a perfect family." So I said, "Well, good, you know, we got to roll with that." You know why we have to roll with that? It's the saddest part of why we have to roll with that. Because we have also been trained to be loyal to our sickness, loyal to our lack, loyal to our oppressor, loyal to the oppression that's in us. The miracle, I kept saying, is she's here. Let's go with it. She's coming back. Let's go with it. 4 or 5 visits, still the perfect family. So then something, I wanted to find out why she was so repressed, depressed. And I said, let me muscle test it, huh? You know, muscle testing is that part of us that just doesn't lie. Unless you've got a practitioner whose goal is to help lie, you know, not really find the truth, not in balance. And so I tested, something happened in the womb. Because, believe it or not, disease goes back before the womb, but also in the womb. Why? It's a cozy place, you know? You're stuck there for 9 months with whatever's going on around you. You have nothing you can say about it. You're there. You're a guest. And every thought that the mother has and every feeling and every generational pattern that is in the mother is conveyed to the child. So I tested what it was, and it was the fact that before she was born, a baby sister had been killed when her father was driving the car. There were no seat belts in those days, or she lived in South America, and there were no seat belts. And after it happened, the father said to the mother, "You never let anything happen to my children again. It's your fault." So the pattern was to keep the blame, to keep the subservient wife. Oh, look out. And so there was an attitude of tension in the womb, of I am not all right because my mother is not all right. She has to take the blame, and I have to take the blame for her. Does that make sense? It can't be avoided. It's just, when I was an OB nurse, I used to say to the baby in the womb, before it was born, they almost kicked me out for doing this. Who is this nutcase who's talking to the baby in the womb? I would say, it's going to be a beautiful birth. You just find your way out that birth canal, and mother, you relax, and everything is so well. But, you know, when I exited that job after a year or so, the evaluator, the nurse who was giving me my exit evaluation, said, "She's more of a psychologist than an OB nurse." I thought, well, what a compliment, you know? I'm so glad, because really, my dream, my passion for the world is to educate the world about the importance of the information we're communicating to each other in every way. What we say and who we are communicates the most. So I said this morning, I said, look, I can't tell people to believe that they are God if I don't feel comfortable believing that I am God. You know what? It's easy to say that, but if I don't believe it, it's not going to come out in my voice. I can't have that. Imagine being my husband. I'm sitting there in our little camper after a night of wind and storm and cold, freezing cold, and I'm saying, I can't believe that I'm God. Because in this program, you talk to a computer, and the computer analyzes the data and the energy, and it sends back balancing frequencies. And interestingly enough, it was seen, I saw it on a YouTube that has been made by world-renowned holistic doctors called The Cure for Cancer, which you can Google. Please do. It's an amazing presentation. And they were talking about voice mapping as one of the most valuable tools for releasing the conflicts that cause all diseases. Are you ready for that? All diseases are started by a conflict. So her conflict was that she had to be the one that was blamed. Now, she had had 2 husbands before this, and they had blamed her too. And they had left her. Is that incredible to see how these patterns work? The patterns of the issues that develop in the tissues? Do you want me to continue? Are you sure? I'll tell you why I ask at this point. Because over the years, over the millenniums, over the decades, over the lifetimes, there has been such a pile of resistance to your truth that has built up that you don't even know about. Look, I may be sounding a little hard on you, but look, I would not be here if it wasn't for someone who was hard on me. And I want to thank all of them, because there were several people who were hard on me. I was enrolled in the S training by a guy who rode down on his motorbike from Gainesville to Tampa 3 times just to get me in the training. Why? I kept asking him. You know, he didn't ask me for a date or anything. He was just doing it. He said, finally, he said, I don't get a toaster oven if you get in. I enrolled. Then I showed up at the S training, and I gave them my excuses. I said, I'm a nurse, you know, and I have to go to work. Well, they had seen this one before, you see. They knew that people always want to back out. They said, well, you made a commitment to this. You made a commitment. That's what they said. And I went, oh, well, I guess I did. Guess I'll stay. And if I had not stayed because somebody held me to my agreement and someone else saw in me a higher and best possibility, I would not have had my life totally transformed from being just about an invalid 20 years ago to being swimming across the Rainbow River every day and, you know, working and having my 70th birthday. You know. So I don't really like to be that tough on people. I guess I'm a coward about it, but I'll voice map it, don't worry. I don't mind giving up being a coward about being tough on people. Because here, I had a lady come in with a green tongue. In Chinese medicine, do you know what that means? It means they are full of pond scum. Their whole body is full of fungus and suppressive things. Fungus suppresses, pulls back. And people who don't want to deal with what's underneath the surface eat a lot of sugars and carbs to suppress what they don't want to feel. I understand if you don't have any other choice, go for it. It's a one way to keep the pain down. But I was sitting there and I noticed how uncomfortable she was with me. You know, we all notice these things. And so I didn't really know what to do because her discomfort was so off the chart. And she finally said, I think I should leave. I said, yeah, I think that's your only choice right now. Because you can't get through all that's between us. Your truth, you can't get through it. It's too intense right now. She left. That was right. Because everybody's not ready in this moment. It doesn't mean that the seed I plant in you today might not ripen later and you go running to exactly what you're drawn to do and to release whatever's there that you need to release. I just want to share with you that as I looked at the 12 powers and the 7 chakras, I kept asking myself, what's the most important one? Is it really love, like they say, you know? Then I realized, oh, love is all there is. So, yeah, but how do you get there? And I realized that every one of the 7 powers was so equally important. And I realized that the 7 powers are the 7 keys to health. Because they are actually, as Charles Fillmore said, regulating the neuroganglionic functions in the body. Now, that's what my teacher in psychosomatic energetics said too. The 7 chakras each regulate the organs underneath them. So if we've got an issue buried in a chakra, then that organ can't regulate as well as it needs to regulate. For example, when I was at the doctor, he said, oh, your blood pressure is a little high. Well, for me, a high blood pressure the high is easily 190 over 70. Now, that's not the medical standard because if you go by that standard, you don't get the medication. You would have to solve the problem. For me, the problem was I was drinking some coffee with reishi mushrooms in it a little bit too much. You know, it was sending me charged up. And then I looked at the other reason. Why? Because I'm relentless on looking at the reasons. Because they release us from the problem. Who wants to carry the same problems year after year? Oh, maybe you do. Anyway, I found that when I looked inside, I had a hurt that had not been resolved. Do you know the #1 cause of cardiovascular illness in this country is hurt and shock that has not been resolved? Well, my hurt was a subtle hurt. It was, my mother had an affair. I never talked about it. I found out about it in Europe doing a constellation therapy, which is a whole other wonderful way of discovering what happened in your family that you don't know about. Because the things about your family that you don't know about are also part of the cause of the disease. They form the conflict. So in that constellation, I found out that my mother had an affair, a very religious, righteous woman, a very godly woman. And yet her pride and her secrecy and her loyalty would not let her ever speak of this. So my mother had a child by this man. And my hurt was that my mother loved this child and this man more than she loved my father and me. And she left him. And I always wanted to be with him. I always wanted my father. So I healed that hurt. Now, do you think you heal a hurt of that size in an hour or in, 30 minutes. It's a process. Healing is a process. We're a very product-oriented culture, aren't we? We have an earache, and we want some drops, and then the earache goes away. But here's the thing, that's really valuable, isn't it? And the main reason it's valuable is we have not learned to understand and interpret our diseases as gifts. Every disease is like, well, which way do I turn now? Well, I better look at this one, because we don't really understand the spiritual path that's guiding us by the symptoms in our body. For example, power. Power. Where does it come from? Behind the tongue. What's the main cause of thyroid dysfunction? Lack of self-expression. Not expressing your power. But thyroxine makes a lot of money on it. You see? It's very profitable for us not to be powerful. Think how much money other people make off of us not expressing our truth fully. And it's a very common thing. Lynn McTaggart, in her book, The Bond, talks about what binds us all together. We are bound not to step out of the box of oneness. And so that's where the 100th monkey comes in. When enough monkeys change their behavior in a scientific study of monkeys on one island, they taught so many to change, then all the islands started doing the same thing. Because, see, it's going to be some people who have the, courage. What is it? What does it take? What does it take? I don't know what it takes. If I knew what it takes to get people to own up to what's going on inside, So I don't know. But I do know that that is the way to ecstasy. It's the way to ecstasy. It's the way to enlightenment. Now, Buddha said you can sit and meditate for 20 years. I don't know if you like that one. I have a hard time sitting still very long. But I do feel it. I do feel the power and presence when I open up, like to your beautiful meditation, your beautiful songs. I felt that energy. And yet, the more we get out, the more we can get in. The more we get out of us. Because, see, the way God is energy, right? We're energy. We're gods. I'm sorry, I hope that doesn't offend you. I joined a meditation path, and they said, here's one of the meditations you should say. It was called Ascension. And they said, you should say this meditation, I am God. And they said, but a lot of people won't be able to say this. So I began to continue to worry as I thought about having a sermon on letting yourself be God. And yesterday, I just Googled, I am God. And you know what came up? Wayne Dyer. And you know what he was saying? You're God. I thought, well, if Wayne Dyer can say it. Yay, Wayne! He's kind of like our guru of sorts. And so I then had to clear my unwillingness, which I realized had come from the many, many, many years of being suppressed by religion. And when it came down to this lovely woman whose mother had been suppressed by her father and was being suppressed by her very, very wealthy, affluent husband, when it came down to why this feeling of unworthiness and guilt and shame existed, it was because of her affiliation with her Catholic Church. Now, I grew up in a church. Man, I loved my church, and I was kind of a holy roller kid. You know, I was down at the altar every Sunday, on my knees, praying. And I didn't do it because I felt like enthused about God, as much as I was afraid. If I didn't, I would, go to hell. But I want you to find the God as you are, your God as you are, because I want for you to be raised up to understanding that the only devil there is all the unfinished stuff that keeps us out of knowing that we are love. Don't you notice when somebody's really in love? Don't you notice that? You notice it in their eyes. You notice it in their heart. You can feel their heart. That person's love is they're in touch with their love. Not that it isn't in there, but in all of us. But some of us have buried it. It's a process of discovering and uncovering love. Children are punished, they're beaten, they are all kind of horrible things that don't say I love you. And so, even in Walmart now, I say to kids, and they're like, oh, she sees who I am. When I was a school nurse, I was just, the kids would come by all the time, like, oh, yeah, hug. I love you, you're all right. But we have so much opportunity to communicate our love to the world and to let the world know. And we do owe it to ourselves to find our love fully. Do you know that? And raise our vibration, and thus be in bliss, and thus be free to be healthy, wealthy, wise. So I'm continuing my search for the most important chakra, or the most important 12 power block. Which one's the most important? Well, I really got attracted to wisdom. Looking at Fillmore's understanding of wisdom, it was wisdom of God coming in. The wisdom of your God. In touch with the wisdom of yourself. Now, I know this one's so important that about 25 years ago, I decided to learn how to find the truth in me. In other words, what God wanted for me in this moment. And I spent 5 years studying kinesiology with a music professor who was keen on vibrations and energy. And I spent every day learning to tune into and discern what was something that was true for me, truly good for me. Wisdom of what's good for me that's coming from the God who is me. Do you understand how much our wisdom has been tampered with? How much people tell us out there what's good for us? That's why we don't trust them. But we go along with it. We go along with that mainstream way to do things. And it takes a lot of guts to step in and find our own wisdom. Because not having our own wisdom can block us from having our love. A client, Marcia. I love Marcia. She put everything she had after her second husband died. Wake up. Hello. I've always prayed God would not give me a sledgehammer to wake me up. But when we don't wake up, the God in us wants to wake up. Do you understand? And the God in us wants to be whole. So the God in her kept hitting her and saying, there's something not right. There's something not right. When her second husband died, she took her money that he had left her, which was, a good vow. And she said, I'm going to solve this problem first. What is going on with me that I had 2 husbands die? Now, it took some work, but what we discovered is when she was a child, she was molested by an uncle that was living in the house. And no one ever spoke of this because we don't speak of these things, right? It's buried, it's kept secret. There's no such thing. So, liberated she is from that event and owning it. It contributed to her feeling more like she had to take care of others than herself, which caused her to have a breathing machine to breathe at night. Because when you feel more responsible for others, it blocks your wisdom about what's right for you, and you can't breathe. But it sells a lot of breathing machines. You understand? Well, there are story after story after story. I have so many stories, and I don't know, how long am I supposed to talk? It's time? Okay, so here it is, a little tip of the iceberg, but I want to tell you the final conclusion I came to. The most important, essential part of the 12 powers is elimination. Do you know one of the #1 health problems in the country? Constipation. Lack of elimination. Not letting go. Not letting go. God cannot get in a full tank. Elimination, lack of elimination, is just meaning that your issues are backed up. Now, there are some good herbal remedies, I will tell you, that will push it on out anyway. But the real solution is to take it as a friend and deal with it as a backup of issues. Well, we're going to be doing a workshop in continuing to look at and find ways for you to use kinesiology yourself, to test yourself, and I have about 7 kinds of kinesiology that I'm going to share with you of how you can tune in to what's in you that is or is not the best thing for you. Sound good? Yes. All right.